Does any of you want to share any thoughts before we start the session formally? I can see somebody wishes to share some thoughts. Is that Krishna? Would you?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon. Yes.
Yeah, sir, what will be there in a part 2?
You mean the part 2 workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the part 2 workshop, we'll be doing the, see here in this part, we are doing the systems in the natural domain and the Fourier transform.
Right.
The first. And in the second part, we'll be doing the connection between continuous and discrete time through sampling. The whole idea, the whole concept of sampling and reconstruction, which itself is a big subject. And some introduction to digital signal processing, and also we'll be doing the Laplace transform and Z transform and their connection. That's in part 2. So the generalized transforms would be in part 2, and sampling and reconstruction. So in part 2, they are the advanced topics of signals and relatively advanced topics of signals and systems. You see, the way I look at it is, I divide signals and systems into 4 parts, the subject. The first is signals and systems in the natural domain, then the Fourier transform, that means signals and systems in the sinusoidal frequency domain, which you are doing in this part. Then the third is the joint between continuous and discrete systems, which come through sampling and reconstruction. And finally, the fourth part is generalized transforms, which are the Laplace, the Z transforms. The last 2 parts, the third and fourth part, will be doing in part 2, and the first and second part we are doing in part 1. And we have divided the course like that. We've also divided into 2 courses, therefore. Any other questions before we start the session formally? Or any other comments or inputs? All right. I think we can now start the session.
When we design a
yes, please. Yeah, yes.
When we design a curriculum, then it is better to say like this: first 2 in the first modules, first portion, and all, because we normally take it as continuous in one semester and discrete in another semester, no? So
well, in signals and systems, the way we deal with it in IIT Bombay, we do teach some discrete system theory also in signals and systems.
Okay.
Although it is dealt with in much more detail in digital signal processing. But
okay.
In fact, what I do is, if you look at it the way I treat the subject, I have dealt with them in parallel, continuous time and discrete time systems. The way I have organized my lectures here. You can of course choose whatever is appropriate for your syllabus, but I find this way of doing things better, because you bring parallels.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You bring parallels and you also show differences.
Yeah.
That is, what I do in the 4th part of the course is I treat the Laplace transform and Z transform also together.
Yeah.
So, it helps to deal with both parts.
Thank you, sir.
So let me now repeat. I was saying that the purpose of these, you see, the way we have organized this workshop, we must now be getting tuned to what we are doing. See, this is a pedagogy workshop. It's not a workshop to teach signals and systems per se. It is a workshop where we are together learning the subject and also together learning how to learn the subject and teach it. So your participation is very important. In fact, all the sessions that we have where you and I are present together are all interactive, and they have they're a dialogue, not a monologue. The monologue is already there. See, the monologue is there with you in the form of the course that is there, the FTP, which is there with you. It will be there with you even afterwards. But the dialogue is what I want in this workshop. The dialogue is what we want and we wish to retain in this workshop. So please make sure that we have a very, very fruitful dialogue. Of course, I would be giving a lot of inputs as we go along, but those inputs would be inspired by your participation. So with those few remarks, I once again encourage all of you to participate very enthusiastically as you've been doing. Now, as I said, from the first session in the morning, we've got a few inputs as to how to deal with the presentations, isn't it? We've seen what we intend to gain from these presentations and how we intend to critically review the presentations and learn the pedagogy of the subject from them. You will notice that we have not kept a heavy schedule of presentations for the day. And there's a reason for that. After some time in this online mode, people simply turn off. So my experience is that more than 3 to 4 hours online in this interactive mode is unlikely to be fruitful in a day. At the same time, you do need to invest 6 to 7 hours a day to be able to gain something from this workshop. So some part of it is in breakaway sessions for you, where I'm expecting that you will also talk to your group partners. It will give you that much needed change from the online session. And some part of it is interactive, where you talk to me, I talk to you. And unless we have this dialogue, this pedagogy workshop is not going to be successful. So it can't be a monologue. It can't just be one person talking. It must be many people participating enthusiastically. This is the way we'll conduct both these workshops, this one and also the one which is coming up in the next week. And of course, that is on advanced topics. Now, again, with those few words, I would urge all of you to make your presentations. We'll continue from group 6 now. And I'm hoping that in this session, we might even get a chance to begin with the next cycle of presentations, right? Even if we can't, it's okay. We shouldn't get worked up about it. But what we definitely wish to do is to identify certain finer points about the topics that you're dealing with in your presentation. And therefore, it must also make an impact on how you then deliver the subject, how you teach the subject, expose the subject to your own student audience. All right, so now I'm very happy to call upon group 6. And group 6, I request one of you to come forward, introduce your group members, and then proceed for the presentation.
Yeah, good afternoon, one and all. Yeah, once again, very good afternoon on behalf of Group 6. And so, welcome to our presentation. So, these are our group members, Professor Amresh Kumar Sahu and Dr. Amrita Anil Agase and Professor Jayanti KBKB and Sunil Somani, and the last one is myself.
So Professor Krishna, before you proceed, I just want to interrupt you and here ask you, have you been able to get in touch with all these participants?
I am coming to that point only.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could not contact the first two persons, Amresh Kumar Sahu and Dr. Amrita Anil Agase. And I've been in touch with this Jayanti KBKB and Sunil Somani sir.
Very good.
And we three together and discuss about the topic and what we need to present.
Very good. So before you continue, I would like to urge all particularly the participants from Walchand College, Sangli, many of you have not registered on the link under the Parimal and Prabodh Chaudhary Center for Teaching and Learning, PPCCLT, and that I think you have not formally completed your registration processes, please do so. So I wanted to urge all participants to complete those processes now. Yes, sorry to interrupt you, Professor Krishna.
Yeah, it's okay, sir. Yeah, very good afternoon. Maybe, in fact, I am a bit nervous. So teaching to teachers, so always they have many questions.
Don't be nervous. Be very, very confident.
Yeah, they have many questions in their mind. So now I will do my best. Let me present whatever I can. So our topic for presentation is demonstration. So before going to demonstration, maybe there are two properties for the demonstration here. The first one is additivity and the second one is homogeneity. So in the morning session, we have seen so many professors and also sir also explained about additivity with various examples and with various real-time examples, additivity examples. So sir correlate to the human body and human life, and somebody correlate to the musical instruments, and the various persons gave the various examples. Maybe I don't want to touch more examples here. And once again, I'll explain this property here. And the additivity says that if the x1 of t produces the y1 of t and x2 of t produces the y2 of t, So the together, so the x1 of t plus x2 of t should be equivalent to the y1 of t plus y2 of t. So let me take one example. Maybe now I am speaking in my microphone. So it's parallelly it amplifies and you're listening at the other hand. So there is an inevitable sound. The other noise is coming from other end. That is a second signal. So my microphone doesn't discriminate between my voice and noise. So it amplifies both the signals. So at the other end you are listening both the things. So the additivity property. So they combine together two properties here. So this tells the property. So if I explain this property to my students in my class like this with various color pens and various color markers, these are x1 of t and x2 of t, and this is the x2 of t. Sorry, this is the y1 of t and y2 of t, and the combination of these two x1 of t plus x2 of t should present the y1 of t plus y2 of t. So if I explain these things in the classroom, so certain section of the people or certain section of my students, so don't trust me and don't believe me. Even I used so many color pencils and the color sketches. So they want the practical demonstration. So they don't want the normal derivations. So some people may understand from the derivations of the property that even mathematically it is correct, but some people will need the practical demonstration. So that's how what this did in a practical demonstration. Here what we did is we have taken the one signal of 200 meters. So the same specifications I am giving here, whatever you have seen in the video group one video. So it is in the 200 millivolt, which produce around 320 millivolts. So for this one, we have used the one op amp adder circuit, and this is given to the RC circuit. So which produce the Y1 plus Y2. And another signal they have given 200 millivolt and which produce the 320 millivolts. So if we combine these two signals, if we give it to the RC circuit, the overall 400 millivolt addition and it is giving the 640 millivolts. This is like a practical demonstration. Even if I say the practicals for this class, certain section of my students will verify their syllabus book whether this content is there in the syllabus book or not. So, but we need to motivate those kind of people. Maybe for them, I need to take some kind of real-time examples, maybe the physical example. Like if you want to eat your food, you cannot eat your food by watching YouTube recipes or maybe YouTube videos. So until unless you make your own food, even though the taste is bad, but it is okay. But over the time, you can improve the taste of the food. Like even though if you want to um, understand, if you want to get the flavor of these properties, you need to verify this in the laboratory by using some simple operational amplifiers for summing amplifier and RC circuit, and there are other components, resistances, and like the power supply and all this. So then only you will get the feel of understanding these properties in a better way. So these are additive property for demonstrating them in the laboratory. So this is the one kind of demonstration. And the second one is homogeneity. So homogeneity says that here I have the x1 of t and here I have the output is y1 of t. So if I multiply this one with some constant like a, so the output also should be multiplied with same factor. Like if you take the whether the system is homogeneity or non-homogeneity. So I will give very basic example to my students. So you take simple resistor and you apply some potential across it and you measure the current flowing through this resistor. So V equivalent to the I by R. No, sorry. I equivalent to the V by R according to the Ohm's law. So if the V equivalent to the 4, R equivalent to the some 2 k or 2 kilo ohms. then I equivalent to the 2 milliamperes. And if I multiply the V by 2, then I should be the 4 milliampere. So I multiplied V by 2 and I also multiply by 2. So this is like a homogeneity. So this is applied here. But if you take same resistor here and if you apply voltage here and this is the R and I want to know how much power is dissipated across this resistor, that is given by P equivalent to the V square by R. So these are non-homogeneous, is not linear. If you multiply V by 2, power is increased by 4 times the square law parameter. So this is the homogeneity and non-homogeneity. So this is also we can verify by using same like RC kind of circuit, like we can give it to the RC circuit and we multiply the factor by input by some factor, and we need to verify whether the signal output signal also verified by the same factor or not. So these are kind of two principles they have demonstrated in the video. Maybe I want to give this brief presentation about these two parameters. Maybe I am so your comments are welcome for me. Thank you very much. Maybe other group members, my group members can talk about regarding this topic if they want. Sunil Somani sir and Jayanti madam.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Krishna. And now I would invite the other members of the group. Would you like to, would you want to say something more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, this is Sunil Somani
Yes.
here. I can add, actually, this additive property and homogeneity, we have seen various things from morning, that whatever the definition and their,
Yes.
mathematical expressions are there.
Yes.
But as far as the demonstration is considered, actually demonstration is something which is a real-time example. They have to see, means real values they have to see, because mathematically it is very easy to represent the things. But as that whatever the experimentation that has been shown, but likewise we can do a lot of experimentation based upon whether it is an RC circuit, whether just an resistor, just a potential divider also you can take for that particular example. And in this potential divider, we can get that K value, which is a proportionality constant. That proportionality constant is there. So that also can be varied, and we can show that through this network analysis circuit. Actually, you are measuring the current across this. You can show on the DSO or CRO also, but you can actually measure the current, and based upon that you can really find out that what is the values are there. That is one. The second thing is, like, you can have this again in a network theory, that current division circuits are there. Then it is a Wheatstone bridge is there, where you can actually show that how the output is a VA minus VB, that is a difference between two voltages when you show on that Wheatstone bridge. That is one example that you can show practically on that basis. The second very important example is, like, I can say that whatever in the morning, that additive, that opera, which has been shown, and by the second group, that opera, as far as this opera is considered, that has been seen that, but if you see the mixer of that opera, which is actually connecting various signals from various sources, and based upon the weighted factor, based upon whatever the gain I want with respect to how much vocal I want, how much the music I want, accordingly I can set the system for the output which is there. So again, it is an effect of addition as well as effect of weighted, means whatever that K factor or proportionality factor is there, that is also considered in that particular case.
It's a linear combination. It's a linear combination.
It is a linear combination, and it is like, as you said, that is in superposition, which obeys both additivity as well as the homogeneity, and which will give you the best. So that is one of the example. We can have either audio mixer as well as video mixer also.
Yes.
In video mixer also, so whatever your presentations which has been done at a studio, so lot of things which has been added in that, right? Whenever we say like this particular presentation, but when you publish that, right, at that time we are doing lot of processing on that, and that lot of processing is nothing but, again, it is the different combination. in between you are showing some presentation, in between you are showing the other member is talking to in that particular forum. These are again the signals which you are taking from, and how much has to be taken, how much has to be not taken, that will be decided. Again, best example for is your luminance signal, which is in television. That Y signal, right? Y signal is the combination of an RGB.
Somani, just 1 minute. Can Professor Krishna stop presenting so that we can see Professor Somani?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can continue, Professor Somani.
Yeah. Means another example, there are a pool of examples are there, but as we know that Y is equal to RGB, means combination of RGB is there, where you'll get a luminance signal and other is a chroma signal. This is again a linear combination of these three basic signal together, which will give you the luminance out of it. So that is another example, which is a real time, because people are seeing that television, people are working on music system and audio system. So these real-time demonstration, when you show and when you relate it to the signal, then the importance of signal and their various properties of that signal, how it takes place whenever you want the final output, that final output which the director expects in case of an music, and in case of an video, I think your studio coordinator is expecting that this particular image should be there. Now your face is illuminated because there is a light on that, whereas myself, actually that is not illuminated because that type of things are not there at my place, because I'm not in studio, I am at my place. So the variations of this, or the linear combination of these various parameters, and that various parameters are nothing but the signal components and the scaling components of that. That way we can actually demonstrate a lot with this particular two properties. Thank you, sir, on my side.
Thank you. Very good. So see, it's very important here to carry away this message of demonstrating some of these properties with some practical. That's what this session actually intended to show. So you must have seen the students have set up a nice demonstration and they showed it to you. Is that right? In that session. So that kind of a planning can be done when you offer such a course on signals and systems. Yes. Okay. Now let's have a review of this presentation. Anybody would like to? I would have a couple of comments on the presentation by Professor Krishna. You see, some of what he said, of course, is relevant, but some of it I thought was a little extraneous. When he talked about the definitions of additivity and homogeneity, I felt that some of the parts which he presented were not accurate, right? So would some of you like to comment on his presentation and see if you can help him improve it? Even the group members can help, in improving upon the presentation. So Professor Jayanti, Professor Sunil Somani, Professor. Yes. So yes, please. Okay. So I don't have any comments coming from the participants, but Professor Krishna, if you look at you go back, I suggest you look at the last parts of how you described additivity and homogeneity. I think, you would do well to look back at the demonstration once again and see what is being demonstrated, and also think of other examples which could be used to demonstrate some of those ideas. Is that right? So, all right, good. All right, now we'll take group 7.
Yes, I think same example he has taken, right? So based upon that, actually we can have the other examples to
other examples. Yes,
right.
Very good.
So that actually I have narrated the other examples, but not shown directly that particular one. But it can be improved.
All right, very good. So now we'll have group 7.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of my group, I am Nandita Shannal presenting you.
Very good. Yes.
Our topic. So our topic is impulse response, a building block of continuous function.
Very good. In fact, now this is a very, very fine. This is a topic which requires a lot of explanation in this subject. Yes, Professor.
My group members are Tanmay Majumdar, Ms. Shweta Uday Patil, Punit Kumar Vivi, Varsha Ratna Parkhe, and myself. But I would like to mention that only Punit Kumar Vivi was there from yesterday till today morning, but other three never contacted me because I have made one WhatsApp group and but they have not joined in that WhatsApp group. So is anyone there? I don't know. And Punit is also not present in this session. I am all alone.
Oh
And
my, doesn't. So is Puneet here at this session? Puneet Kumar?
I have checked that he is not
And
there.
Varsha Ratna Parkhe or Tanmay Majumdar, Shweta Patil, any of them are there? So it's a pity. Actually, we should, have better participation from Group 7. Doesn't matter, Professor. We appreciate your participating and your presenting. So we'll have your presentation.
So I have gone through your lecture material.
Very good.
And as far as I can do, I have made my presentation.
Very nice.
So let's go to the presentation. That our objective of this presentation is to describe a continuous time signal through the impulse response. To describe a continuous time signal through impulse response. Now, what is an impulse function? That is to be explained first. That impulse function is, we all have studied impulse force. So we have studied that force which is of very high magnitude, but it is operating for a very short time period on a very short area, small area. So pressure developed due to this force is very high. Like in this signals and system forces, there are impulse function, and it is impulse function is a very narrow pulse, and it is having its area unity. So it is basically a square pulse and a single pulse. Suppose its width is delta. So in that case, to its area to be unity, its amplitude will be 1 by delta. So delta dot 1 by delta, it will be equal to 1. So that is the impulse function basically. Now, so with this impulse function, we can describe every continuous time signal. Now, here the topic is impulse response as a building block of continuous signal. What is response? That means when a system is excited by an impulse function, the output is given, we get some output that is called the impulse response. So the impulse signal, what I have described in my last slide, will be applied to a signal xt, which is an arbitrary signal, and we will see whether by applying this impulse response we can construct this continuous signal. Now, xt is a continuous signal, and in our previous study on mathematics, on calculus, we know that continuous signal must be defined at each and every point of in a time span. That means there may be infinite number of points, but in each and every point that the function must be defined. That means function must have a finite value. So I have tried to draw a dashed line on according to this function. You can see that these are the infinite. Imagine this is the infinite number of points, and each and every point there is a finite value which corresponds to this signal. So now if we superimpose this, superimpose the square pulse of width delta on this type of signal, in that case, there will be a series of such delta square pulses, and our objective is by adding all those square pulses, we should get the continuous signal xt. Now, when this xt and the square pulse both are superimposed, we can get a signal. We can get a square pulse which is having with this undulation like according to the signal xt. Now, if this delta, that is the width of the pulse, is very small, and suppose it is gradually diminishing, so you can see that when it is very small, still smaller, you can see we can get a very narrow pulse where the top portion reflects a single value at a constant value. This constant value is taken from the original signal xt. Okay, so I don't know whether my example will be relevant or not, but in our childhood days, there was a toy camera. We used to play with it, and we can see that if we put our eyes on that camera, we used to see different pictures, like different buildings of different places, or some heroines of some pictures were there. So I would like to share something with you, that if we press the lever, this type of signals are shifting. These pictures are shifting. So the images are basically shifting. So can you see the see the video?
Yes. Very nice. Yes.
So actually, what is there? There is a disc. On the disc, there are small squares you can see. And let us consider this disc as a continuous time span. On over it, these small squares where the films are there, we place our narrow pulses at those points. And whenever the narrow pulse is placed on a black square, then the content in the black box will be sieved, and the viewer will see the picture there. So that is same as whatever I wanted to tell, that whenever this impulse function, narrow pulse, is placed over a continuous time signal, it will just viewer will see the xt value, the constant value, through this narrow pulse.
Yes. Very nice. I must appreciate this example right here. Very nice. So in fact, this ViewMaster example is a beautiful way to explain the idea of sifting. In fact, she has written it on the left side. Is that right, Professor?
Yes, sifting property. How it is sieved, how it is sifting actually. Sir, there is a problem. My slides are not changing.
No, it's okay. We can see them.
No, I cannot change my slide. Okay. So let me explain with this example. Let me explain this sifting operation, this sifting property. That means I have told that this type of continuous time signal over which a narrow pulse is just placed, and we can see the instantaneous value of that xt through the narrow pulse. So let us consider this signal at t equal to t0. T equal to t0. Let us take an arbitrary time t0 through which we will see the signal. So this square pulse is defined by, since it is defined by the impulse function, then we know that impulse function is defined at t equal to t0 only, and other than t equal to t0, the other points in the right side and the left side, the value will be equal to 0. So in that case, when xt is superimposed on this delta function, then xt delta t minus t0 will be equal to x t0 delta t minus t0, because through this impulse we can only see the value x t0.
Yes, very correct.
So if now this function is performed for each and every point from the starting to the beginning, that means from minus infinity to plus infinity over the whole entire time span, then the total signal will be given. Now, how to represent this? Now, to represent, now we have to stitch together all such narrow pulses, all such instantaneous value together to get the whole signal. So let us consider a symmetric delta impulse function, so that delta t minus t is equal to delta t. From the previous equation, we know that this is equal to xt0, and if we put the symmetric property in the next, we get the next equation, that is xt. Sorry, I have missed dt altogether. All the dt's are missed.
It doesn't matter. You can specify it now. So the integration is with respect to t.
No, integration with respect to time. All the integrations will respect to time. So this will be t0 minus t. Now these two equations are quite different. These two, first one says that multiplying a function by a narrow pulse and integrating over all time results in a pulling out of value and function at the point at which the pulse is located. But in the second section, you can see that t equal to t0. Afterwards, we have given t equal to t1. There are t equal to t2. Likewise, we have taken several time instants, and in each and every instance, the signal will be multiplied by the delta function. And all such values are added together. All such values are added together. All such values are added together and over the entire range, and graphically we get the total signal xt. So from here we can say that impulse response is a building block of a signal, because we have seen in our last few slides that adding each and every point with the impulse response at each and every point over a given time span gives the signal value in this time span. That is, xt can be constructed with the help of this impulse response. So that is the thing, and in the conclusion, we can say that every function is a combination of an infinite number of very narrow pulses. So any continuous time signal can be defined likewise, be it a sinusoid, be any kind of signal that can be defined by this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. This was a very, very nice presentation. I was delighted to see the example of the viewer. In fact, that was a beautiful example that in my childhood also I've seen that viewer. I don't know, nowadays I don't think, we have so many other computer tools that people don't know about this viewer. But this used to be a great attraction in our childhood, when you use that viewer and keep flipping. And this is a beautiful way of explaining the impulse. So I think all of us should take inspiration from this beautiful explanation which Professor Nandita Sanyal has given of how you could understand sifting. Sifting, literally in Hindi, the word is channa. Literally sifting means to, extract small parts of any entity. So, very often when you have grain, you sift out the grain from the chaff, as they say, from the sift out the grain from all the other pollutants of the grain. So here too, sifting means being able to pull out a particular part of the signal. And Professor Nandita has beautifully explained how the impulse does that. Now, this impulse, the whole idea of the impulse presents a lot of challenge to students in signals and systems. So I think you have all been very fortunate to have a beautiful exposition of the idea of an impulse with Professor Nandita's presentation. And I would encourage you to use such examples. Now notice that Professor Nandita also brought out the two different interpretations. One interpretation is that you can put an impulse on the signal somewhere and extract the value of the signal at that point. The other interpretation is you can stitch together many impulses and make a signal. Is that right, Professor Nandita?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
First, you have to understand the value of, you can extract the instantaneous value.
Yes.
And then you will stitch over the time span.
Yes.
Then you can get the total continuous signal.
Yes, yes. Very nice, very good. Now let's have some discussion on this presentation. So would anybody like to present some further thoughts on this? I was very happy with this, example, and yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So any further discussion? Yes, Professor Seema, yes.
I would just like to ask you and Anta ma'am and every others also,
Yes.
this concept of extracting an impulse signal and then stitching together all the impulse signal to create the continuous, does it form the basis of reconstruction of signal?
In a way, yes. In a way, yes. You see, you think of it like this. There are two views of it. Now,
I mean the DFT, yeah. I think you're getting my point, but I'm asking. In the digital signal processing, we are extracting and then reconstructing, going back into frequency and time. So,
yes, in the discrete domain, the idea of an impulse is much easier to understand. In fact, I hope some people may present it later.
Yeah.
But because there's no problem. It's an impulse is a sequence like any other. But in the continuous time case, the impulse is not really a function. The impulse is what is called a generalized function. So, you cannot query the value of an impulse at a particular point, but you can say what the impulse does under an integral sign. So the impulse is a generalized function. It's not really a function. It's called, technically it's called a distribution. So it's not really a function. It's like it can be thought of as an operator. Now, the other thing is, yes, you're right. In a way, the idea of stitching together a function with impulses is also an idea related to reconstruction.
So where is the thin line? So where is the thin line of difference between digital and continuous now? I just want to know that. Because there also we have samples and here also we have impulses. So narrow pulses.
Very good. There the discrete time impulses are located at points which are spaced from one another. You see, so between two impulses, there's none other. But in
so
the
so there is a sampling
case,
frequency there, sir.
There is a sampling frequency, and there's also a space. There is a gap between two samples. Whereas here
you have to define an infinite number of such points.
That's
infinite number of impulse operators are required.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Even in a finite interval, you have as Professor Nandita says, that's the beauty of continuity. In a finite interval, you have an infinite number of impulses. Is that right, Professor Nandita?
Yes. You can, any span can be divided into infinite number of such points.
That's right. And each of them carries a unit area with them.
Unit area,
Okay.
like that.
So, of course,
because
that unit area is then scaled by the value of the function at that point.
Yes.
When it is stitched together.
Yes.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Very
you.
nice. Very nice. Very good. Very nice. Yeah. Any further discussion on this? This is a very important idea. So we must definitely appreciate this idea very well if we wish to teach signals and systems. So any other thoughts on this? Yeah. So I think there's a question from Professor Sakre. Can you please explain the slapping example? Oh,
sir, just
yes.
long back, I have. If you could revise it for us, sir, please.
Yeah. No, can you? Can you just give me the context? I've forgotten which context this.
In relation to impulse, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I very often, when I explain the impulse to my class, I also put across the following explanation. See, an impulse is like a slap that you give to the system. When you give an impulse as an input to the system, it's like slapping the system. So it's a sudden, as in fact, Professor Nandita said that, it's a sudden force which exerts a large pressure, but only for a very the amount, the total, the integral of force over time, the amount of energy delivered is finite. But, it's in a slap, what do? You suddenly exert a lot of pressure and you shake the system. So an impulse response is like that, So an impulse is like that. An impulse, when you apply an impulse to an impulse is like a slap. So it's a sudden jerk. An impulse is like a sudden jerk. In fact, we say some people act impulsively. What does that mean? They act with a sudden burst of energy, which dies down. That's what impulsiveness is. Is that right, Professor Sakre?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So an impulse, an impulse input is like a kick given to the system, or so an impulse is essentially a huge amount of energy or a huge amount of force or a huge amount of any agent concentrated in an infinitesimal time. Like Professor Nandita said, force, concentrated on an infinitesimal area, right? So the pressure starts going towards infinity, and therefore it has its consequences. Yes, very good. Well, there's a question from Professor Mridula. Can we get some extension on submission of graded activity? Yes, you'll get some extension. Yes, don't worry. Make an attempt to do it as soon as possible. You'll get some extension. Yes. Now, any other questions or any other comments?